Okay.
So welcome to our next edition of our Think Like an Explorer videocast. And our theme for today is thinking about generosity, which sounds like a terribly touchy-feely kind of subject and not something that's terribly relevant to either business or hardcore mountain activities. But I've just come back from the USA, and the mountain community is actually deeply generous. We open our houses to each other. We share information with each other. We pass friends on through a network so that you end up with some extraordinary person that you've never met, but it's a friend of a friend of a friend from 10 years ago. And they're quite delighted to have you sleeping on the couch and take you out to their secret powder spot deep in the Wasatch Mountains, which is more or less what happened to me. And the same goes for the expedition planning. I mean, I'm in the middle of borrowing some fairly expensive equipment off people for the Logan trip, while cheerfully lending them equipment that I've got in the interests of all of us having the good stuff and not having to spend any more money than we absolutely need to. Nigel, I guess that's your experience as well?
Absolutely, Kathy. Yes. I mean, I've just come back from South Africa, and friends out there, you know, it really is, why don't you just come over? Let's just do something, book a flight, and the rest will just sort. And it's how we have worked in the outdoor community for many, many, many years. We'll share information, we'll share ideas, as you say, share gear. And we don't see, though there is a competitive edge sometimes when somebody's trying to do something exciting, we like to give and obviously receive as much as we can, because that's the kind of people that tend to go in the mountains. There isn't the big budget side to it. There aren't people trying to do performance targets. We're all just trying to help each other. And that's what we do on and off the hill.
Well, I think it probably seems obvious from the outside, because in a sense, I mean, there's a good deal of ego in the mountain community. Let's not, pretend otherwise. But we're not in direct competition with each other. We're not athletes competing for prizes. None of us own the resource that we're using, which is the wilderness. And on the whole, we all obviously benefit from sharing information. So it's actually reasonably easy to run a generous community.
Yeah.
But what interests me is the ways in which those same ideas turn out to actually be good for us, beneficial for us in less obvious communities. So on this particular blab, we're all in the speaking business, one way or another. And there we are more obviously in direct competition. I mean, you and I, Nigel, could actually be, directly in competition to get a slot for an adventure speaker at a big corporate conference or something like that.
Absolutely.
And yet it remains in our interests actually to share rather than to compete.
Yeah. And I think, Kathy, it's a very good point there, because if I got a call of, Nigel, can you speak at an event? And it was, no, I can't, I'm away or whatever else, I'd very happily say, but talk to Kathy or other people. I might not be available, but I wouldn't be saying, oh, no, you can't talk to anybody else. I'd happily give other people contact details to help out, because in the future, they know you're helpful and they know they'll probably come back to you. And we recommend each other on a regular basis. I can't make it, but I know 3 or 4 people that probably can. Here's the details, give them a call.
Or the thing where you got the job, which is great, and banked the check, which is also great, but they're not going to have you back next year. I mean,
no, absolutely.
So
yeah.
they're going to have somebody.
Yeah.
So again, I'd rather leave them with the great impression that, yes, I have some great contacts. I have some good recommendations for you. I can help you get next year to run more smoothly.
Yeah.
Than to somehow try and close off that opportunity to other people.
Yeah. Yeah. I find it works very well in the media as well. People will contact me for comment on mountaineering, sometimes about subjects I'm not an expert in. I've done this with you, actually, Kathy. Somebody once said, oh, about something on Everest, what do you know? I said, no idea. Well, I know people who might. Here are the details, give them a call. And I think somebody actually did give you a call once, Kathy. Just, I don't have that knowledge, but I know people that do. Share it. Works for everybody.
And it's certainly one of these industries in which, again, it's reasonably obvious that we could be making it bigger. So rather than competing over a small pie, by cooperating with each other and spreading the message, that speaking is an interesting and beneficial thing in business, we can make that pie bigger. And I think that's it's a mindset of scarcity versus a mindset of growth for the entire industry, not just for ourselves.
Yeah. I think it's something a great deal of us work with, because in Britain, certainly, as a mountaineering speaker, there are plenty of mountaineering speakers out there, as there are plenty of people doing other business things as well. But a great many of us actually share our own ideas with each other for free. And we'll actually hold workshops with each other for free and help each other for free. Make the call. If you've got a problem with something, ring me up. I'll tell you for nothing. We don't have that. Well, I charge this much an hour, or, I'm not telling you this because it's close to my heart. We're very, very generous in that way. And that's what's actually made the business so strong, certainly in the United Kingdom and across the world with things like PSA and NSA. People are prepared to share for free. I don't see that when you get patents and businesses, arguing over who's going to be top of the scale.
Yes, Cindy, you're in the sort of the admin end of the business.
I would definitely say it really depends on who you share the information with, because yes, it is business, and you have to be very selective with who you are generous with, because there are some who will just take all your information and then they do use it against you. So I think you have to have a bit of a business hat on when you're using it as a strategy for your business. Otherwise, you get what I call mine rate, and you find that all your information disappears. Somebody else starts using it, and then the clients that you were setting up, they've actually then been taken over by another speaker or a fellow colleague that you put some trust in. And all the strategy, all the energy, all the effort you put into has then suddenly gone. With a lot of the sharing going on with the industries I've worked with, I tend to find that they tend to be people that are not totally in direct competition. They'll share different information with them.
Yes, I think there's a real valid point there, which is not that we're simply saying, throw your house open to strangers, give your money away. We're approaching this with an attitude that says it's beneficial. It's beneficial to ourselves and our businesses, and it's beneficial to the people that we enjoy working with. And I think we're all going to run into some situation where we get taken advantage of, either deliberately or inadvertently. The equipment I loaned doesn't come back. I end up with somebody on the couch who, frankly, I'm really glad to get rid of after a week. So we're talking about doing this intelligently. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And although it's not, I don't think of it as absolute reciprocity. I will do A, B, C for you if you guarantee that I will get X, Y, Z in return. Yeah, much more about, let me do A, B, and C for you. And, if you can help me in the future, please do. Yeah. Paying it forward. Yeah. But in ways that are intelligently planned.
Yeah. I think that's far more beneficial for a business than this straightforward, I've got to give you something and there's going to be something back in return. And I think that having that mind shift for a lot of businesses where they're not as generous, they do not seem to advance as quickly as those that do. And I think in the speaking, in the mountaineering, in the niche areas, we've learnt by sharing certain things, we do get on a lot faster.
Yeah. Well, an example that fascinated me when I was writing up my latest blog post was Tesla, who, of course, famously last year threw open all their patents for free. And they duly confirmed that they meant free. And apparently Wall Street had a complete fit because this is intellectual property that they'd just given away. Yeah. And the stock price did dip briefly. But Elon Musk is really interesting about this. The bigger the market for electric cars, the bigger the market he can sell into. And he's just utterly convinced that he will be better at making and selling electric cars than anybody else in the market. But if you have a bigger market to sell into, he'll make more money. And I think he's a very interesting example of that. invite all of you to join me in growing the pie, and believe me, I will outcompete you in that market space.
It's a heck of a gauntlet to lay down, isn't it? But I can remember electric vans and vehicles 20 years ago, but it was too niche a market and nobody wanted to invest time and effort into it, and so it died. But as you say, now we've got our environmental heads on and everything else, and people want to do things. Do you hold your cards close to your chest, which means that everybody can go in 5 or 6 directions and not actually achieve much? Or do you throw that pie out? Do you say, right, okay, this is what I'm doing. Let's get all of our cards on the table and work together, because it makes a bigger market. If I can outcompete you all, now that's a heck of a challenge, but he's going to do it. A friend of mine's just bought one, actually, and it's, pretty good. It's pretty good.
Yes, I mean, obviously, we're talking about operating sensibly in the middle here rather than the utter extremes. And the opposite to that is the patent trolls, people who are simply buying up other people's patents and then going and threatening to sue companies basically for using them. It essentially seems to be legal blackmail. And a lot of companies give in because it's easier to give in than to face fighting it out as a lawsuit. And, that's such a restrictive, short-term way of approaching business. And such the loss isn't just in the fact that the people are chasing money that they didn't actually earn. These aren't their patents in the first place. It's the loss to everybody. It's the loss involved in taking time out to fight lawsuits. Yeah. It's the loss involved in not making use of those technologies because you're afraid that you'll get chased down for the patent. Everybody in the long term loses, for a very short term immediate gain for one company.
And I think everybody then starts holding their cards close to the chest. Nobody wants to share. Nobody wants to get out there. And nobody gains. Nobody gains at all. We just end up isolationist, whereas we'd be much, much better being a sharing community.
I think because it comes back down to how much they do share. I mean, I remember one of the old business strategies, was it Rolodex?
Oh, yes.
They actually put the telephone number of the CEO, the chairman, the vice principal, all the guys on the board into the actual Rolodex. So every time you bought one, you had that.
Crikey.
Now, first of all, they got blasted because they were giving out the private contact details, direct contact details of all the board members.
Uh-huh.
But they actually found their customer services got their act into gear. Because suddenly anyone phoning in saying, well, I've got the direct number of, and I'm going to call it. So the generosity there worked, but as an industry, they were then blindsided by what else was coming in. So
sorry to interject there. Is that customer service or is that common sense?
But it still started with the generosity of actually thinking, let's give out the information in the first place.
Is it really generous? Yes. I'm sorry, I'm wearing my customer service hat on at the moment. I live in England, so do you, and we're not really doing it here, are we?
No, but it's still sort of like giving away information. It's actually using information as a leverage and sharing and building that trust.
Wow.
Yes, I think we're using generosity in a fairly broad form, which is, are you saying that every single thing you do, you only do if you have a guaranteed result and return for it? Or are you prepared to run your business with a certain attitude of certain things we will give out in the hope that they will come back to us in ways that are beneficial for us? But we don't know for sure. But we're prepared to try it anyway.
Accountants don't think that way, Kathy. That's the trouble. They're very much short-termist and so on. But yeah, I think you've got to get that because everything is about the month end, isn't it, or the quarter end and the year end. And,
yeah, but I think somebody needs to hold accountants to task about that and say the world doesn't run to quarter end and year end.
Yeah.
The things that you have been I'm not sure what the word I'm looking for, kind of mean about in order to make the target for this quarter may well come back to bite you in years to come. And somebody needs to have a bigger picture vision about, is this the company we want to be? Is this the culture we want to have within the company? Is the numbers at the end of the quarter the be-all and the end-all and the lifeblood of this company or not?
Yes, because if you actually just go by what the accountant would say, then Tesla would certainly not have actually opened up and did what it did. But if it didn't affect the stock market that much, which is what the accountant would say, yes, of course it would, then obviously there's a bigger game plan going on, much bigger than just the figures.
I think a lot of this is counterintuitive. I know plenty of companies that run on competition within the company, and that's supposed to be good for people. It's supposed to motivate the sales teams to be in competition with each other. And there have been all these different models about you fire the bottom 10% of your staff every year in order to only keep the very best performers. And there's some interesting research saying that all that happens is people hoard their information, people work desperately not to be in the bottom 10%, people grab the credit and shove the blame away as fast as they can. None of that is actually productive for the long-term positive culture in the company or for the long-term strategy.
I know a number of companies actually, Kathy, who are stuck in that. They have a very big corporate outview on life and a corporate social responsibility statement about we do this or we provide whatever. And then when you get under the top of that sort of lid, you see managers in major competition for bonuses. And I've seen some of the most creative accountancy in my life. And I don't just mean in pound notes, in whatever they're measured by, whether it be numbers of sales or time, and they will take everything to the last degree to prove they're better than somebody else. Instead of being a manager, they become the accountant. It's a very unusual role to see, and it's not particularly productive because what you start doing is out competing each other, and it can get, I've seen it actually get quite bitter. That's not good for a company. That's not good for people who are working for you. All that does is irritate people, and production goes down. Not all, but so few of them can see it because they're so far forward, they can't see the vacuum behind them.
Yeah, I mean, I do quite a lot of work with corporate executives, and I get brought in on leadership briefs. And what's interesting to me is that they want to be better leaders of their team, but they're all members of the executive team. And a great many of them do not think like that. It's all about being the pharaoh on top of their particular pyramid of staff and maintaining control of their silo, their information, their credit, their line of promotion within the company. And they'll say, well, we have a problem. Our different divisions don't seem to talk to each other. It's like, well, yes.
Hello, wakey.
And it is noticeable, the number of leadership teams who do not consider themselves members of a team. They're all much too busy being leaders.
Oh, yeah. But I've seen that on the mountain as well. I've been on trips before of 4 people in a group, and you've got 4 individual leaders and nobody wants to be a team member, but that's a whole other subject.
Oh, yes, the whole too many chiefs and not enough Indians type of thing.
Yes. Yeah.
Everyone's a leader, so someone else actually needs to do the work.
And we run in 4 directions and achieve nothing. It's quite frightening until somebody actually realizes that somebody really needs to take charge and the other 3 really need to muck in, but nobody wants to accept it. And that can sometimes come, I've found, from what they do in their professional lives affecting what they do in their private lives. They used to be a manager in their professional life, so when they come home they still want to be a manager. But that's a whole other subject for another day.
In the sort of some of the research I was doing around the blog post, so I picked up 3 areas in which researchers were talking about companies potentially having an approach of generosity. And one is the one we've just been talking about, the culture within the company. But another one was then about how you interact with customers. And they made the point again there, think about it, even if you being generous with customers, i.e. customers who complain or return things or have problems, or, just in how much product you provide to customers for what they've paid for, all of that. Even if that seems like a bad idea, you're throwing money away. one article made an interesting point about, well, if you're not going to have a culture of generosity with the customers, what are you going to do? Have a culture of scarcity? How is that going to go down if you are coming across as mean and penny pinching, particularly in a world of social media? And I mean, we know how the exceptional goes viral.
Yes.
And the exceptional piece of really good customer service goes viral, but even faster, the exceptional piece of the customer feels utterly cheated by the company.
Yeah. And I've seen it with my experience mainly is in the electrical industry. You know, we've all got Twitter pages now, the big companies all got Facebook pages, whatever else. And it's very, very simple for any customer anywhere in the world to tell you that you're useless, or to tell the world that you are
tell everyone else.
And you know your service is rubbish. The issue is, obviously, we've always got the problem of there are some people that will always moan. There are some people that no matter what you do, you're going to get a bad day with them. Okay, that's the way the world is. But you can share also that wonderful news so fast, but you've got to be on top of your game. One of the things that irritates me, it's the age-old, I need to ring somebody for something. I spend 8.5 minutes listening to music and pressing 1, 2, and 3, rather than please put a person on the end of the phone or just say, good morning, sir, how can I help you? What's your problem? Oh, how happy day. Because we are not
that takes vision, Nigel, I'm afraid. And again, that goes back to the accountants. Let's cut costs. Let's get rid of the staff. Let's don't train our staff properly. And that's why it happens. I was with a friend yesterday, and he bought some meat at a well-known not wholesaler, what do you call them? Discount warehouse. Okay. I won't mention them on this blab. And you know, they sent in an email of complaints, and then someone, I don't know who, got a reply saying, "Can you please phone us with your telephone number so we can pass your details on to our customer complaint division," or something. I mean, it's ridiculous. In this country, we play at customer service.
Yeah.
If that was anywhere else in the country, I mean, I'm very sorry, Mr. So-and-so. There's £50 compensation. Come and see me next in the store. That's what happens. That's what people want. And it just never happens in this country. Very rarely. Unless you're dealing with, I want to speak.
A British
What's
thing then
interesting,
about
I think, is...
Sorry,
go ahead, Cindy.
I was going to say, is it a British thing about generosity then? I mean, do we view it differently? So therefore, whilst we're doing one thing like being in the speaking community, we realise that we have to give, and sharing information is one thing. But when it comes to being a business, you're not allowed to be as generous and sharing because we assume, for all sorts of reasons, not to have that trust there.
Yeah. Ooh.
I mean, I think what's interesting was just listening to Jeremy talk about that experience. We, as customers, as clients, we really do hate feeling that somebody's, cheated us out of something or treated us meanly. And I think accountants can kind of miss that one. How just deeply unhappy you can make people feel.
Yeah, it's incompetence. I mean, they'll cough up eventually. But again, in London now, and I'm probably get hit over the head for this. I now go to I eat out a lot in London, and you go to restaurants, and you are served by people who can't speak English properly, and it's a problem. You put up with it 5 times, 6 times, 10 times, but it's now becoming a real problem. And a lot of my friends saying the same. They would rather not go out than have to go to certain restaurants where you just don't get the proper service. Mm-hmm. I'll exclude Italian restaurants from that because they're fantastic. But lots of ordinary chains.
Well, I'm not sure that those are the same
Italians
thing.
know how to serve.
Levels of service and how they speak English aren't necessarily the same thing.
Chains over here, and it's becoming a problem. And it's affecting the customer experience. It's wrong.
But is that now generosity as a business strategy now going out the window because we're now having to pay for where the business strategy has gone wrong of taking on cheaper staff, cheaper labour?
Well, okay. Maybe. I don't know.
I mean, something I've seen a lot of is you can teach people to say things as in, thank you for coming, or did you have a nice experience, or I hope you enjoy the meal. But of course, they don't have to say it with sincerity. All they have to do is tick the box to say, yes, I said that to the customer. How many surveys have I had on email with, did our client or did our representative tell you about this? Well, they might have done. But if they just said, I'm ticking the boxes, so I've said it, and now I've said it, I can get by and get on my next job, or were they actually doing it with sincerity? Because in the speaking world, you'd be found out really fast if it was, yeah, thanks for the gig, give us me money, see you, rather than the people that come early, do the gig, are polite, talk to people afterwards, leave later on. You know that kind of stuff sticks.
Yeah.
Rather than the
and you do have to wonder if, you know, you can't say...
And go. Go on, Kathy, sorry.
The staff are treating the customers the way that the bosses are treating the staff.
More than likely.
The staff are not trained, underpaid.
But I think this is
also a bit cultural. I think it's also a bit cultural as well.
Yeah, but I think also if you think about with the speaking and the mountaineering, with the mountaineering, you know, if you lend some of your equipment out, you're helping somebody to achieve their goal. And when it's your turn to achieve your goal, you know that you're going to get that back. With speaking, you're generous because you're giving information out. I mean, you've done a couple of articles recently, Jeremy, and I know you guys have also done articles and posted, and you're doing things like this to give out your information because you're showing the level of your competency so that people know what they're getting before they get you. But I think the problem comes with business is that sometimes they forget that and they get caught up in customer service, they get caught up in the accountants, they get caught up in all the detail to actually forget what it is they're actually trying to do.
Yeah.
Yes, I think there's a lot of and it's difficult. I mean, you're trying to measure success in business, and by far the easiest way to measure it is by the money. And the money matters. You go out of business without the money. But it's harder to measure the price you pay by being mean to your staff and mean to your customers and mean in the way you interact in your marketplace. And it can be hard to put a financial value to being generous in all those aspects. But the goodwill that you get back, the positive PR in your community, the happy staff who are actually proud to work for you, as against just, you know, slogging their way through to the wage at the end of the month. There's enormous value in that, but it's very hard to put on a spreadsheet.
Yes, well, they try to do it with a goodwill, but what the management accountants prefer is the return on investment.
Yes.
And that does crop up in marketing, it crops up in the sales, it crops up on various different, because it's a very definite kind of figure that people like is if I spend £10, can I get £11 worth of value back?
Just opening, just an idea here. Do you think company size makes a difference? And the reason I say that is I'm born and bred of the same town, and you know, I'm still here. And I would rather buy things from a shop knowing that the staff there will do everything they can to help me. They will even come and fit whatever it is I've bought for no extra cost. And say, if you have any issue with whatever it is, take an example of TV, just come down the shop, come and have a word, we'll sort it all out. Whereas you go to a huge corporate chain, you buy it, they can't deliver it for 6 weeks, they want to come when you're not there, and every time you try to call them, you listen to some music for 2 hours, and you say to yourself, do you know what, I'll go and buy it, it's an extra 10 quid, I'll just go and buy it, because I know the customer service I get will always be wonderful. And you just, it's what I do. I find it with a lot of the smaller outdoor shops and some of the sort of medium-sized retailers, they want to take an interest. They're not just bothered about, well, washing machines are over there, sir, pick what you like and give us a call. You want some interaction, so I'll go to a smaller retailer who does it.
I'm not convinced. I think it might be easier, but I'd take Apple as an example of a big company that is surprisingly generous with their tech support, for example. Something goes wrong, you phone into Apple, and yes, you have to sit in the queue and listen to the music and et cetera, et cetera. But once you get a guy on the line, he's surprisingly competent. He's not simply reading a script, and they will stay on the line with you hour after hour after hour and work through things.
But do you not think that's because they are geeks? They absolutely.
Yes, but that's a choice. Somebody chose to employ geeks. Somebody told the geeks they could stay on the line.
They absolutely love what they do. They are absolute Apple geeks. They love the job. Whereas if it is, I am another serving at a table in a big chain restaurant and I don't want to be here and the boss is a nightmare, what you're going to get is poor service. When somebody lives, eats and breathes this thing, you know, get me off my iPhone, you'll probably find that they enjoy it more than you do to mend it.
But I think the biggest problem, though, is that you used to get charged one hefty lot of sums and costs for being on a telephone call to that organisation. So the generosity in there is not just straightforward having the idea that allowing their agents to be on the phone call for one person the whole day if they need to, as opposed to a target of you must answer 4 people within 3 rings and spend 5 minutes with them. So the attitude has changed there, as well as also there's telephone costs of it doesn't charge you £8 a minute to be on the phone to them anymore.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I better not mention, but there's a certain well-known provider of these. I'm not very happy. And it's just gone downhill in the space of 6 months. And I don't know why. I think they're just too big. Got too big for their boots. Mm-hmm. And you go to their shop in Brent Cross and you've got a queue to see someone. And then you ask them the question, I don't know the answer. Very frustrating. But hey.
I think on a note, not mentioning the fruit word, but apple, I had an issue with something recently, and you know, I was struggling with some programming, but they're all independent retailers. So you've got your numbers down again. It's a big brand, but it's a shop run by 8 people. So it's not an Apple, you know. And the guy just said, yeah, we can do this, we can do this. If you'd like to, why don't you book an hour with us for £19 and we'll sit through it on your computer? I'm thinking £19 an hour. Where do I book?
Where do you live?
Derbyshire.
It's worth me driving up the M1 to see you.
You know, just to say, I'm struggling with this programme. Well, just book an hour. So 19 quid. Here's a number. Give us a call when you're ready. No hard selling. No. And they were just really, really happy to help because they love the product. And I think this is a huge thing. As speakers, we wouldn't be in the speaking trade if we didn't love the product. If we hated being on stage, if we were terrible, if we detested public speaking, do you think we'd be in the trade? Of course we wouldn't.
Well, you see, what's interesting about that is these various of these companies you've been talking about, Apple, Tesla, and so on, and speaking as an industry, all of them are actually driven by people who are interested in something more than just the bottom line. People in Apple are, as a generalization, driven by the technology and the design of it and the customer experience. You know, Tesla is driven by a very big vision about what it would mean to swap over to electric cars. Speakers are driven by a passion. They have ideas they want to share. And I think all of that helps to feed into a more generous attitude because it matters to you to share what you're excited about. And if you get a penny more or a penny less, I mean, you need some pennies, but, you know, with some businesses, it's very much any fraction of a penny lost. That's a disaster.
What about the disruptive companies in the nicest possible way? There are people behind Uber who are very passionate about what they do, and Airbnb. Would it apply there, do you think? Generosity, that is.
Generosity for them was actually giving away the programme to begin with. Their generosity was let's give away, let's get it changed, and then we'll work out where the money is later on. So, yeah, it's still their passion, and they had a reason to do the passion. In the case of Airbnb, it was because they're in that situation themselves. So they wanted to, how do we get everybody else together? I don't know the story of Uber.
I think Uber as being a generous company.
Not now.
The screws on what the drivers get.
Yeah, not now.
Badly.
That's the generosity of the freebie program and everything. They will still say they're generous because they're still giving the program away for free.
Yeah,
there's a lot of negatives about Uber, isn't there? But yeah, I love the app, but they do frighten me sometimes.
Yes, I like the customer experience.
You don't know what you do
about the big picture of Uber. What it's like for the drivers.
I downloaded some of the TED Talks as a podcast, and Joe Gebbia was on, or Gebbia, however you pronounce it, about how Airbnb started and where they went from just trying to get people to trust each other. You know, how do you let somebody you've never met, who you've got no idea, walk into your house, give them a key, make them cups of tea, and then, you know, and you obviously they're all bad news stories, but there are good news stories too, and things that go wonderfully well, and friendships are made. You know, how many of us are speakers if somebody has put a post on social networking? I'm going to be in such and such area next week. Anybody fancy a coffee? You can imagine every director in Britain doing that to his competitors or across the world. I'm going to be in New York next week. Anybody want to share a patent? It's running a mile.
No. But having said that,
I'm going to be in the area. Well, come and stay with us and meet the family, or why don't you? We just do it. It's like mountaineers. I'm going to be up in the Cairngorms. Anybody fancy going climbing? Yeah, I'm there. Only recently I was meeting up with folk without social networking. I wouldn't have known they were there. We caught up. We haven't seen each other for ages, and had a good old-fashioned rattle and catch-up because we're in the outdoors. We love it. We ended up on the hill next day together because we love it.
Yeah, actually, coming back to Jeremy's point, I think that disruptive technologies are really interesting because they're generous on the face of it. And so something like Airbnb is, yeah, come and stay in my home. And then, one day I'll come and stay in yours, except we're essentially paying it forward. We're not directly swapping. But a lot of this, what are we calling it? The sharing economy, where actually what we mean is people are going to work for an absolute pittance with no insurance, no pensions, and nothing else. That's actually not generous at all. That's pulling money from a very big pool of poor people and bringing it into the hands of a handful of incredibly rich Silicon Valley, startups.
I mean, are we any further forward than, I don't know, where are we? We're 2016, aren't we? Sometimes I look at, if you think about the millennials and the Generation Zs, it's frightening that young people, even young qualified people earning good salaries, cannot afford to buy a house in the UK. Well, certainly in the southeast. It might be different in parts of the world further up north, but it can't be right. Can't be right. And sometimes I think, have we really progressed since the 1880s and the Victorians? Working conditions are a lot better, but are we actually really, as a society, any better off?
I think this is why you have to have a certain amount of generosity as part of your business strategy. Because if you're seen to be giving, those companies that do seem to be giving in one format or the other do get ahead quicker and faster than those that seem to be just money grabbing all the time. Because we definitely, as the UK population, we like a good underdog. Those that sort of give, that we like champions, and we also like taking out the baddie as well. So the press, you see it all the time, they build them up, and then they pull the rug out from under their feet if they get a bit too big for their boots. But it always comes back down to generosity, how they deal with other people, how nice they are, what they do with their wealth. Are they doing everything offshore, or are they actually putting all the money here in the UK? All those type of things. So it's kind of sort of like coming back down to the pay it forward. If you're taking in, are you passing it on? Are you giving information back? Or are you just one of those leeches that just takes all the information in? I know it happens in the speaking world that if you see a new guy coming in, you help them. But if you start realizing they're just taking all the information in, they're getting on, but they're not passing it any forward, I've seen those guys been dropped and cut.
Yeah,
and
very quickly.
And I guess it would be the same within the mountaineering. And interesting enough, I've seen it even within the business community when they have their own little get-togethers. Like, for example, the banking sectors, they all know each other. And if you get one of them who starts not sharing with each other, with others, when they lose their job at one bank, they're not getting hired at the next.
On a smaller side to this, particularly when it comes to staff in a company, I know a number that used to do very big things like match funding with the staff. You raise some money for charity and we'll match it. Suddenly you build a workforce up that's very motivated. I don't know, somebody supports a local football team, we need some kit, we've raised £500. Well, that's fine, we'll give you 500 as well. The PR costs you nothing, £500, nothing. The PR you get out of that and the good feeling with your staff you get out of that is immeasurable. For £500 or £1,000, and of course people are queuing up at that point. You do have to draw a line somewhere, but people are queuing up, and of course your corporate name is plastered all over it in lovely nice type. Good news stories that cost very, very little. It's the simplest thing in the world.
Yes, I think that was the third key area that I came across, was the social philanthropy type of thing. Just contributing to your community, and it doesn't sell your product, and it's money that you've taken it away from your bottom line, but the PR you get from it, and then the positive morale within the company as employees feel engaged and positive and well liked in the community they live in. All of that's immensely powerful.
And
I think
go on, Kath.
yeah, I was just going to say, I think what's interesting out of this discussion, we've talked about a couple of different companies, and we have really quite strong feelings about them as customers, and we have impressions about whether we think of them as being mean or generous, whether we think of them as being open or closed, whether we're thinking of them as sort of screwing us or being partners in making our lives more interesting. And that's the intangible that is so hard to put a figure to, but it really exists as a thing.
Well, that's exactly what Virgin did today, wasn't it? Virgin Trains. They're now going to compensate everybody with a cheque, as opposed to waiting for people to kind of get in touch or supply them with travel vouchers instead. But the amount of PR and the press have got over it.
Yes, and it's an interesting choice, because I know that normally the difficulty of customers in applying for refunds that they're owed is a management strategy. You know that a good 30% will never go through the hassle of applying, and you save money that way.
Yeah.
So Virgin is giving up money by doing this.
Yeah.
They said they're
But
going
it's the simplicity. The number of times it's, oh yes, you can make a refund, but you need to do. Once actually, when I was in a wheelchair, they put me on the wrong train. But anyway, and that was an interesting conversation with their staff. And their view on it was, well, we'll give you some travel vouchers. And my reply was, you really think I want to travel with you if you put people on the wrong train in a wheelchair? But at times you don't have a choice. So the only train that goes that way, you have to do it. But at the time, it wasn't the best PR I'd ever seen by a company. But never.
So generosity can be done wrongly then when they're too helpful, or it's just not poorly, or it's just poorly thought out then.
It was poorly thought out, but I've had it with a number of companies and a number of places where it is, we'll give you vouchers to spend with us. So the money doesn't go away. All they want you to do is, well, we've appeased you, we've given you something nice, but we're getting our money back in the long run anyway. So what's the problem? Not good.
But I mean, look at how long you've held on to that story, and it's like, the wrong train in my wheelchair. And it's like, that was not worth it to the company.
No.
For a little bit more money back then, you wouldn't be, you could be telling a very different story to us now.
I didn't even get an apology. I did not get an apology. It was just a standard letter with a voucher in for Virgin Trains, and they didn't. I mean, it took me about 4 phone calls to even get a reply. And you just go, well, what's the point then? And that's the issue. If we have got feedback,
give me a call next time, Nigel. I'll drive you up, man.
Okay. But the other thing is, the feedback is important, because if somebody's got an issue with us as a speaker, perhaps we're either at the venue, they can come and speak directly with us, or they will directly contact us, because we're very open about how to get hold of us. We've all got websites with our contact details on, phone numbers and all the rest of it. They don't have to go through a call center or somebody else that's shielding. We have, if somebody says, Cindy did a great job, please tell Cindy, they'll come up to you and tell you. If they said, Cindy, we're not happy with something, they'll come up and tell you. You're not going through customer services that, frankly, sometimes are very good and sometimes don't care. We get direct feedback and we can act on that. And how we act on that is all about our reputation, which is very, very different to going round. Thank you for calling such and such. Please press 1 for this, because half the people, after 6 or 8 minutes, hang the phone up and say, for what I'm going to get back, I can't be bothered.
So basically, generosity as a business strategy is something which is seen as literally giving without any attachments to it. It's done with a feel good. It's an emotional kind of, rather than a bottom line result.
Yeah.
Although I think it's done intelligently. I mean, most people give forward in the hope that it will come back and benefit us. But it's not reciprocity. It's not going, I will do this in exchange for that.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily accounting it so that I will only do ABC if I get equal value or more value, or whatever. It is a certain attitude that says certain things we give away because it's good for us, it's good for our customers, it's good for our reputation. And we have faith in this helping us to build our business.
Yeah.
It's I think also, even though we think of businesses as a thing, they are in the end simply great accumulations of people. And I, for one, would rather live in a world where people are more generous and more helpful to each other and all scales.
Yeah.
And I think as people within businesses as well as individuals, we're saying something about the sort of culture we want to live in.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
Well, I think we've run well over our time.
Massively over. I think we've been so generous.
Absolutely.
We've been generous with our time. There you go.
It will be
Thanks.
we'll be back in 2
Thanks
weeks'
a lot.
time at the end of April. Nigel, you will be back from your Greenland expedition. Is that right?
Well, I hope so, yes.
Well, we hope so.
Thank you.
Well,
We'll talk a bit more of that.
so
When
we'll
you-
probably have an expedition one. We can talk about what you've done, and we can talk about what I'm about to leave to go and do.
Oh, where are you going, Kathy?
Okay.
Mount Logan, highest mountain in Canada. So
Okay.
that's going to be a ski expedition.
Oh, right.
I'm
I'll,
just-
I'll, okay, yeah. I'll say break a leg, but in the nice way.
Right off the nut. Thanks very much.
As if you're going to the theatre.
so
Right, well, I think I might go for a walk over Hampstead Heath tomorrow. That's my exercise, I think.
Sounds like a very good plan.
Well, thank you for joining us. And it's a great discussion today. And thank you, everyone, for being in the room.
Excellent.
See you
That was
soon.
fun.